Hi there, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Conversations with MM. This is Marivir Montebon here in New York City. It's almost midnight, and I'm running this podcast because I just feel it's very compelling to present to you what has happened in the past few days. So I hope you'll enjoy this podcast of ours today. And we have two features. We had the opportunity to watch And So It Begins. It's an international feature film created by the great Ramona Diaz. She wrote, directed, and produced this film. It's a companion film to A Thousand Cuts, and it's about Maria Ressa, the Nobel Peace laureate of the Philippines, and Vice President Leni Robredo, when she was running the a campaign that snowballed the pink movement in the Philippines in the last election. So we'd like to showcase this film because we're excited. It's an entry to the 97th Academy Awards here in the US. So let's take a look. And Ramona is giving us a backstory on how the film was created. Enjoy this, ladies and gentlemen.
My previous film was A Thousand Cuts, and that was about Maria Ressa. And this is, I guess we're calling it a companion film, but this was in the A Thousand Cuts premiered in 2020 at Sundance, and then the world shut down. So we had to reinvent the wheel. Remember those? And we had to release it virtually. And toward the tail end of that, 2021, Rainey Aronson-Rath of Frontline said, I think we should do a follow-up with Maria. Just an hour of television. Let's do it. Let's do it quickly. So I went back to the Philippines, which was still in lockdown. And the Philippines had one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. And I had to quarantine for 14 days. It was really tough. But I went back and started filming with Maria. But then realized that Leni Robredo was going to run against BBM, the dictator's son. And what Maria Ressa was talking about was going to happen in real time. So it evolved. It became bigger, and it became And So It Begins. So it's not really a sequel, but a companion film. So that's how it started. So by the time we started shooting And So It Begins in 2021, I've been filming with Maria since 2018. And the thing I love about Maria is that she understands the power of bearing witness and recording stories, right? She's a journalist, right? So she understands that it's for posterity, that it's important. So in a way, it was easier. It's never easy. Access is never easy. It always fluctuates, goes up and down. But she understood why we would hang out for the longest time, that we wanted to be first in the room and last one out. So in a way. But politicians have especially in a campaign, have so much to lose, right? And the more they think they're winning, because in the bubble they thought, they were winning, the more they contract. Um, and so it was interesting. And I didn't have that ramp. Usually I hang out with the people I film for a while, without equipment, without the camera. Just really just to get to know them and they get to know me. But this time she was announcing. So there was no,
Right.
it was like, okay, we've taken off. We're now filming. So we come from the same town in the Philippines. So tribal, right? And she knew my family, she knew my work. She also liked 1,000 Cuts. And this was going to be a companion film. She liked that idea. And also, she also understood as more and more people came, and it was becoming a historic campaign, she understood, getting footage and bearing witness. She also knew the importance of that. She started to understand. That's really the reason I wanted to follow Leni, because she said something that really drew me to her. She said, this is going to be a lonely campaign, because she had she joined the race late. She had no idea all these people were going to show up. They had no money. So I like lonely campaigns, right? It's very interesting, because if you're the only one trying to, climb this mountain, and of course it didn't turn out. And then Robredo came into I guess this is the same. She came into the race very late.
Yes, another
right?
similarity I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
I didn't even appreciate.
Yeah, very late. So at the end of the day, Ferdinand Marcos really won. I mean, because they sold martial law at the time of the golden age, and they were going to get gold, and they were going to be able to buy rice for 20 a kilo of rice for 20 pesos, which is impossible. But they were being promised something, I think, really concrete. Well, Leni, for all that, was promising roses and hope.
Right.
You can't eat roses and hope, right? You can eat rice for 20 pesos. So it's I think we're talking about the messaging, right?
Yeah,
That is that. I think there was something about Leni Robredo that you felt she was not corrupt, right? So that was the feeling, that she was clean. And in the country of the Philippines, not corrupt. But yes, you go for her. But
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that short conversation with Ramona Diaz. This was this was on November 13, just recently at the East Village by Angelica Theater. And this was brought to us by the J3 Marketing and Production. So I'd like to thank and say hi to Miss Jonah Jane Tahonera for inviting us to watch the film. It's only one time here in New York that the screening was done here in Lower East Side. So I had a good conversation with Ramona, and I asked her if she has a script when she does all this film, or she just follows the flow and just shoots randomly. And she said she has an idea in her mind, and she just lets the actors unfold as days go by, and she tackles what's going on in their political lives. In the case of VP Leni Robredo, and in the case of Miss Maria Ressa as well. So that was interesting. Hopefully, manalo ang film na ito, because this is a major entry for the 97th Academy Awards, Oscars. So all the best to you, Ramona. And in the Philippines, the film is still being shown in theaters. Okay, so hope that's all the best to the film. So now our next feature event is a immigration rights forum, which was sponsored by the Filipino American Legal Defense Fund, or FALDEF, which is headed by attorney Lizelle Cobrador as executive director. And the president of FALDEF is attorney JT Malonga, and the chairperson of the board is former Bergenfield Mayor attorney Robert Rivas. So they partnered with the Long Island Nepalese Society, New York City, in order to create a forum that would answer the mounting questions on immigration issues, immigration rights, immigration concern, as we are headed towards the incumbency of President-elect Donald Trump. So there are so many concerns about immigration. So the lawyers took it upon themselves as a responsibility to provide the needed information. And so we went to Levittown on a Saturday, November 26th. So first I'd like to feature the lecture of Attorney Lizelle Cobrador on DACA. DACA is Deferred Action on Child Arrivals, or the Dreamers. So let's take a look on what's going to happen to them under the upcoming Trump administration. Take a listen.
Foremost, DACA is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. What does this mean? There were children who were brought into the United States. Unbeknownst to them, they had no immigration status. They were brought by their parents, or they were brought by their guardians, and they don't have status. One person who is kind of became a symbol of DACA was Jose Antonio Vargas. He came out with an article in the New York Times in 2011, and FALDEF was one of those he consulted, maybe primarily attorney JT Malonga, before that New York Times article came out. And we have this deferred action for childhood arrivals today, by and large part because of the advocacy of this man and the advocacy of so many other immigration associations in the country. So let's see now what DACA is. So it provides eligible immigrants who came to the U.S. as children, and it protects them from deportation. So it's not a status, sadly. There's still no path to an immigration status for childhood arrivals. What they can have is a work permit, and they can also get Social Security, driver's license, and at times they are given advance parole or a travel permit. But there's a way actually for DACA recipients to get that. If they're able to leave the country on the travel permit and enter using that advance parole, then that will be considered admission and inspection. If they marry a U.S. citizen or an employer sponsors them, then there may be a way for them to have a path for citizenship. Next slide, please. So let's go into the brief history. I'll be very quick. As you can see, this started in June 2012. It was an Obama program. And then in 2017, the Trump administration just rescinded that. In 2018, a district court blocked the Trump administration's repeal of DACA. Essentially, the Supreme Court said what the Trump administration did, just repealing DACA, that's not allowed. And so what happened? They continued accepting DACA applicants, and President Biden issued an executive order directing federal agencies to again process DACA applications. But sometime in 2021, There is again a federal judge in Texas that ruled that DACA is actually illegal and they prohibited new applications. So, next slide please. Where does DACA stand now actually? So, USCIS will be accepting renewals only. So no new applicants are being entertained. So if the applicant missed that application time, then there's no chance for them to apply. Also, if you were renewing DACA and you missed that window, it also might be difficult for you to get that DACA approved. So essentially, people are in limbo. Next slide, please. So I won't go through the requirements. I'll summarize it in 3. You must be 31 years old as of June 15, 2012. You entered the US before you turned 16, and you have 5 years of residence from June 15, 2007. So I won't go through all of this. You can research that in uscis.gov. You can prove physical presence in the US by a variety of ways, receipts, having a lease, medical documents, and all of that. You need to prove that physical presence from 2007. You can be ineligible for DACA if you have certain issues, like the government perceives you as a threat to public safety or national security, or you have some criminal convictions. So to those applicants, you would then be best not to apply if you have those kinds of issues. Or please consult an immigration attorney. Those kinds of applicants might have hesitation because they will be in the system now, and you might actually put yourself in more danger. Next slide, please. So I won't go through the renewal, and I think we will be getting to the meat of the topic later on. So next slide, please, sir. Thank you. Like I said, the current rule for existing DACA recipients, you can renew the status. Work permits could still be renewed. Advanced parole requests are still being entertained. In fact, we have DACA recipients who got their advanced parole because normally how the government processes this, if you have an important work trip, that's what I would say. If you are employed by a US company, if you are employed by a company that works internationally and has branches internationally, and there's an important work trip that only you can do, those times, the government will give advanced parole to DACA recipients. Okay, what's not allowed? Like I said, initial requests are not being processed anymore, and USCIS will accept, but they will not process the application. They will just take your money, right? And they will not give it back. It's just going to be in limbo. Next slide, please. This is the more important topic, asylum. So I'm going to give you an overview of asylum. And let's go. So what is asylum? Asylum is when a person seeks refuge because they fear past persecution based on a well-founded fear of being persecuted on account of race, nationality, religion, social group, or political opinion. So this is a legal protection available to individuals seeking entry in the United States. And this is the main thrust. We need to prove that the well-founded fear is based on those grounds. Race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group. So, race, normally, that means because of who you are being discriminated against, you know? You are born into that race. It's immutable. You cannot change it. Religion, based on what you believe in. like Christianity or any religion, and you are being targeted because of that. An example then of membership in a particular social group is, again, this group should be unchangeable. For example, you belong to the LGBTQ, right? That's a social group that could be counted under asylum. Political opinion, it means that you ascribe to a political party's view and you are being targeted because of that political party affiliation. And for Nepal, what are examples of the political parties? Please tell me. What are examples of political opinion?
Well, in Nepal, they have parties every 3 months, new parties. So, I would give you an example. I mean, the oldest one is Nepali Congress. As you
Okay, that's one, Nepali Congress. Any others?
Communists, there are many communists.
Okay. Okay, so if you are targeted because of your belief in that particular group, then that's political opinion. Another, if you are targeted because people believe that you are a member of that party, you don't necessarily need to be a member, but you are associated with that party or you support that party, you could also be eligible for asylum under political opinion. Not having a political opinion and opposing the government could also be a political opinion. So it's very complex. So next slide, please. So there are two types, affirmative asylum and defensive asylum. So affirmative, what does it mean? You're the one who present yourself to the government. I am applying for asylum. Normally, these are asylum seekers in the affirmative stage are those who came into the US on a B1, B2, on an F1, a student visa, and they present their asylum application to the USCIS. Or they could even be those who are getaways. Who are the getaways? They crossed the border, but they were not caught. And they applied for asylum. That's also an affirmative application, so they need to file with the USCIS. On the other hand, what is defensive asylum? Defensive asylum seekers are those who were referred immediately to court, and as a defense, you say, I'm applying for asylum. You are in removal proceedings. You're put in the proceedings because most of these asylum seekers cross the border on foot. It's called entry without inspection. The quick history, it'll be worthwhile to examine how we got to this point and how asylum came about in the US. So this started in the 1951 convention where the definition of refugee was outlined. Next, in 1967, the protocol relating to the status of refugees was expanded. Then Congress in the United States, in the Refugee Act of 1980, incorporated the definition of refugee into the law. Next slide, please. So here are the facts and figures. This was from the Department of Homeland Security. So that's where we got our statistics. And this is only for the year 2023. And you can look up the figures yourself, how many derivative asylum status were from relatives, how many affirmative asylum were granted. What I know is that the courts are very overwhelmed. There's so many cases in the docket. And last week when I did a master hearing to schedule the case, guess what year the individual hearing is?
2010.
2027. So that's how delayed our courts are. Next slide, please. So we're gonna go to due process, but so I just want to say examples of due process violations. This weren't touched upon. This is in the immigration judge context. So what is noticed citizen hearing. Essentially, you need to get notice and you need a hearing. Plus, your case should be considered fairly. Those are the three hallmarks, and these are the violations. If the judge already preconceived the decision, you can tell that there was some bias. That's not due process at all. So if you were prevented from fully examining the evidence against you, that's also not due process. So these are all the examples. Next slide, please. So the level of due process will vary from each situation, and it depends what stage we are in the process. As a conclusion, it's undeniable that immigrants are always the easy target. They are blamed for everything wrong. And it's so convenient to misconstrue the narrative of the immigration process when it is what the basis of this country is built upon. We need to end the jargon used to describe those doing the most extraordinary acts, starting a new life in a country where isolation is endemic. With that, Dadiba.
Okay, that was Attorney Lizelle Cobrador, who gave a lecture and who was discussing very extensively on the DACA, or the Dreamers. They are under the program of the Deferred Action on childhood arrivals. So according to Attorney Cobrador, at this point, the Dreamers are in limbo. So between now and towards the end tail of the Biden administration, people can still apply for renewal of their DACA permits, which essentially is a work permit. And otherwise, when the new president sits, President-elect Trump, he will decide whether to continue with DACA or not, or he will replace it with something else. We have no clue. So right now, the DACA program, the Dreamers, are in limbo. So at this point, I'd like to also share with you the lecture of Attorney Omar Almanzar Paramio. He was talking of executive orders and the processes of immigration applications, the due process. So let's take a listen. This is very important. Take a look.
If you are convicted of a crime, misdemeanor or felony, doesn't matter which, that's a red flag. Under immigration law, a conviction just means you pled guilty or were found guilty. Very often I work out deals for my clients where you plead guilty today, but you're not sentenced, you're not put in jail. You get a year to do a program and show the judge that you are a good moral character, you've turned your life around, and now you are a person renewed. But during that year, you're still convicted under federal law. So even if you have a suspended sentence or an interim sentence, you can still be deported. Next slide. Okay, so this is what I was referring to before with the laws versus the executive orders. The law is when Congress, the House and the Senate, decide together a law to pass, they present it to the president signs it, now it goes into law. How often do the House and the Senate agree on anything? Almost never. So that's why there's been no changes in the law, right, in terms of immigration. And sometimes you'll find out that they don't want to pass laws because they can use that as a way to attack the other side. In the executive order, any president can sign an executive order, which just means we know the law says this, but we're going to just focus on this part, and we're going to enforce it only up to this much. That's called prosecutorial discretion. I'll give you a quick example. It used to be that if you were charged with a crime and you went to jail and you were waiting for your turn at trial, you weren't convicted yet, you just didn't have money for bail. an ICE officer could come into the jailhouse, go right to where you're sitting in the jail cell, and say, sign these papers and deport you without a hearing and without a trial. Completely going around your due process. New York State, thankfully, had decided a long time ago, you know what, we're not going to allow ICE officers into the jailhouse. They can wait outside the jail, and they do, but we're not going to allow them inside the jails anymore. And then the ICE officers decide, okay, do we want to wait outside the jail or no? That's prosecutorial discretion, or an example of where executive orders can tell the officers that they have what to focus on. You're going to hear a lot in the news lately about raids. This happened in Trump's first administration, and he's already announced that he's going to do it in his next administration. What is a raid? Let's say they believe, ICE believes, that there is a factory, a warehouse, a building that has a lot of undocumented people in it. They will send 100 officers to surround the building, go inside, and ask each person one by one to prove their citizenship and round the ones that can't and try to deport them. That's going to start happening, and that takes a lot of resources, a lot of people, organization, hours of work to do. They're going to focus, that's again, prosecutorial discretion and executive orders. They're going to focus their resources on this sort of stuff. Now, President Biden passed in an executive order back in June for what JT referred to already, is called parole in place. If you want to enter the United States as an asylee, instead of coming into the US, you apply from where you live or in Mexico, and you wait for a response. Parole in place. That was something where now families that were coming in, if your family member wants to apply and you are a US citizen, they don't have to go back. They can stay in the US and apply. That was just vacated by the Supreme Court. I believe on the 7th, literally just happened. So executive orders, they're not permanent. They can change at any time. I used to tell my clients that with each new president, there's going to be new executive orders. Now, unfortunately, with each new tweet, there's going to be a new executive order, because that's the way our next president is going to do. Some changes that we actually did have, the one in the 90s, included the Violence Against Women Act. In situations of domestic violence. Why did we need to do a bill to protect women in situations of domestic violence? Because again, usually, when a woman is in an abusive relationship, she finds it difficult to leave, difficult to speak up, and difficult to cooperate with the police out of fear of ongoing or more vengeful physical abuse, financial abuse, or emotional abuse. So a series of laws were passed that gave women more power to be able to get up and leave and report the abuse. Along with that came the U and the T, the U and the T visa. U visa and T visa are very similar, but this was specifically for undocumented women. So that if you are in a marriage and you depend on your spouse for your status, you can leave and still be eligible to become a resident, eventually a pathway to citizenship, as long as you cooperate with law enforcement all the way to completion of the case.
Okay, that was Attorney Omar Paramio of the, he was invited by the Long Island Nepalese Society in New York City. It's an organization of Nepalese residents on Long Island, and they're pretty much a big group. And so Attorney Paramio is a personal injury lawyer and an immigration lawyer as well. So he was giving a lecture on what are the probable executive orders that President-elect Trump would likely issue when he sits at the presidential office in Washington, D.C. So there would likely be raids, like huge, massive raids based on his campaign promise to do massive deportations. So that's something that's worrisome, and people are being frightened, and they were given lecture information on their rights, because people have the right to due process, whether you are off status or on status waiting for your approved petitions. You need to know what to do. So I'm so glad to have been able to join the event, the Immigration Rights Forum, together with FALDEF and the LINS. So it was a learning experience for me at the same time. So with that, I'd like to close this episode right now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you learned something, and you keep educating yourself on what's going on in the U.S. and the world. So enjoy at the same time as well. So take care of yourselves and take care of each other. So for now, have a good night's sleep. It's late already. So enjoy. Bye for now.